You're listening to Convenience Matters, brought to you by NACS. We'll talk about what we see at stores and what the future may hold for our industry.
QSRs are coming for the convenience store business. That's what we're going to talk about today, and it's a really important topic because when you look at food service in convenience stores, it's approaching 30% of in-store sales, and it's approaching 40% of in-store profit dollars. What do you need to do? What do you need to be aware of to protect and grow that share? Joining us today to talk about all things food service, both in our channel and in other channels, is David Portalatin. He is Senior Vice President and Industry Advisor, Food and Food Service at Circana. And he spoke at the NACS State of the Industry Summit, where he gave an overview about some of the things going on. It was very, very interesting, and that's why he's here today. So thank you very much, David.
Hey, it's a pleasure, Jeff. Thank you for having me here. And I like the way you framed things at the beginning, that QSRs are coming for convenience stores. If I was speaking to a QSR-driven audience, they might say convenience stores are coming for QSR. So there's certainly a battle for market share going on out there, and who best can be positioned to meet consumers' needs. So this will be fun.
Yeah, and the way you phrased it, based on the way I phrased it, is also interesting because for years, the convenience store industry has always been perceived as the one taking other people's best ofs and implementing it into the convenience model because the convenience model is relatively new compared to others. And let's add food service, let's add self-serve gas, let's add all these elements. So now we're at a point in time where our channel is being looked at to possibly cleave off best of to other channels. It's somewhat of a compliment, but obviously it's also something that retailers, convenience store retailers, really need to pay attention to. So give us a big picture. We talked at the outset, who and why are the competitors to convenience stores right now?
Well, the biggest thing in the big picture is the consumer. And the consumer doesn't frame anything in this language that you and I are speaking of. They don't talk about channels. They don't talk about QSRs. In fact, the term QSR doesn't mean anything to most consumers. The consumer thinks, I'm hungry. How am I going to meet my needs in this moment? And so I think it's really important, regardless of what your store looks like, what format you're in, what channel we in the marketing world like to categorize things in. If the consumer is the center of the focus, then we are way ahead of the game in terms of learning how to grow and be relevant to their needs. And let's be honest, right now, the consumer is facing a lot of very significant headwinds. From a food service standpoint, none are more significant than menu price inflation. Average eater check right now is up about 5% year over year, which is a little bit higher than CPI, but that's not really the most important number. The most important number is that average eater check is up about 36% compared to 4 years ago. So this cumulative inflationary headwind, on top of some of the other things that consumers are dealing with, and I'm not an economist, I won't get into all that, but things like credit card debt, which is now over $1 trillion at double-digit interest rates. And there are all kinds of things in the macro environment that are really causing consumers to rationalize their spend and make their choices very carefully. For convenience food service operators, that just means a competitive environment suddenly just got that much more intensely competitive, because we do see consumers reducing their frequency of sourcing meals outside the home. It's much less expensive. If you're looking for a low-cost eating occasion, my pantry, my refrigerator, my freezer, pretty hard to compete with on price. And so more and more consumers are opting for those at-home kinds of occasions. And so in a world where consumers are reducing their frequency away from home, when they do go away from home, they become very discerning about the choice, about where are we going to deploy those dollars. And so that makes the landscape just really intensely competitive right now.
when convenience stores look at day parts, lunch has always been thought of as relatively strong. Breakfast was pretty strong until the pandemic changed some commuting behavior. Dinner was always a challenge, and then there's snacking occasions in between. Maybe we'll just start this by, let's start the earliest point in the day, the early morning occasion. Whether that is considered late night or early morning is one of the areas that QSRs are increasingly looking at when convenience stores seemingly had that with 24-hour operations. What's going on in that pre-dawn experience?
Yeah, great question. And I'm glad you included this idea of late night as it sort of bleeds into early morning, because even though in proportion to the whole, these are relatively small occasions, but this is where there's been a lot of movement recently, transactionally. Quick service restaurants have seen quite a bit of growth in recent periods at that late night occasion. And frankly, the QSR is outperforming convenience store at that day part. Now, again, whether it's really an early morning or a late night, these terms are up to the consumer to define when we talk to them about such things. But what I think is really happening is that, look, breakfast, lunch, and dinner are always going to be the main food and beverage consumption occasions. That's not ever going away. But gradually, incrementally, over a long period of time, those big moments during the day are eroding a little bit to these differentiated new types of occasions. These occasions may be defined differently. They may be more snackable kinds of occasions. They may require different portion sizes. And I think ultimately, one of the opportunities, again, whether you're a restaurant operator, whether you're a convenience retailer, one of the opportunities is to look at your portfolio of products, whether those products are coming off the shelf, whether they're coming from a kitchen, prepared, hot prepared, whatever the case may be. Consumers, I think, are looking for flexibility around what I call the 3 Ps: price points, portion sizes, and portability. Because these are largely on-the-go occasions that we don't really know whether to call them breakfast or dinner or whatever time of the day that it happened. But we're looking for the flexibility to manage different price points, different portion sizes, and things that can be taken with us to craft these eating solutions that fit that particular moment in time. And as we look at longer term macro trends of disrupted workplaces and the emergence of on-demand economies where people really don't have a traditional job, they make money in a variety of different ways. Mm-hmm. And I think you're going to see more of these loosely defined eating occasions emerge and become more prominent.
I'm so glad that you couch this as, let's look at how the consumer defines things, because I think it's probably pretty rare that somebody's at home and says, honey, I'm going to the convenience store. I'm going to pick up some salty snacks. Would any of the kids like a frozen dispensed beverage? That's not how they talk. Somebody's hungry. Somebody wants something now. I think the most common thing when you search on Google is open near me, that phrase, and then fill in the blank on what they're trying to solve. So when you talk about breakfast, lunch, dinner as meal occasions, there's also different times that pop up. We were talking a little bit about overnight. For old people, they may remember the Mac Tonight commercials with McDonald's, where they were really pushing the dinner day part and post dinner. Taco Bell does a great job in whenever you want to eat, we'll be there for you, and telling that message. I think it's an enormously important point that there are so many not 9-to-5 jobs now, whether it's the gig economy, whether it's second and third shift first responders, et cetera. Nurses, for instance, they don't want necessarily to grab something from a vending machine if there's some other option. So there's all these opportunities in play, which is a good thing, but you have the point pressures here, the price pressures. Before talking a little bit more about some of the other challenges, opportunities by day part, one of the things you're also seeing is that when people are buying food out, they're also changing what they buy, and a lot of that is driven by economics.
Yeah, absolutely. And we've seen some what you would call trade down behavior, whether that's trading down to a less expensive channel, whether that's trading down within a menu to lower cost menu items. And we've seen some evidence of trading down from larger sizes to smaller sizes, which part of that's economics, but again, part of that goes back to that portion size flexibility that I spoke to. We've
Mm-hmm.
even seen more adults purchasing kid meals, which again is about saving money, but it also could be about those flexible, different kinds of eating occasions. And so, yeah, there are all kinds of ways that consumers are looking to save a little bit of money. That's one of the reasons why we really see a lot of aggressive activity across the food service landscape right now around deals. Percentage of traffic bought on deal, hovers around 27%. And that, again, it's probably really higher than that. That's what the consumer perceives was a deal. And you're really starting to see a lot of growth in the QSR landscape around digital coupons. And this is an area where that's a strength for QSR that C-Store sort of lags behind in, is that whole digital engagement world. And then some things that may be a little counterintuitive that relate to that digital. We're still seeing delivery grow. Now, delivery is not necessarily the lowest price point option out there, but the third party guys, your DoorDash, your Uber Eats, are helping to spur a lot of growth in delivery. This is also an area where, really not in the C-Store strong suit, as your convenient location is really one of the key drivers. So these are just a few other things that people ought to be aware of and look out for when it comes to competition from the QSR space.
Following the pandemic, we saw in our channel a decrease in commuting, obviously. So you saw an erosion of the breakfast customer. At the same time, we saw something new emerge with people working more from home. You saw a mid-morning customer and a mid-afternoon customer. And maybe they called it a meal, maybe they didn't, but they wanted to get out of the house. They wanted to get something to eat, and whether it's a sandwich on either end, or maybe it's some of the things that we heard at the SOI Summit. Maybe an apple and a string cheese is considered a meal by someone. So
That's right.
how do retailers look at the changing definition of what consumers think of as meals and take advantage of that?
Jeff, we use the term fluidity all the time, and it's just a recognition of the fact that how we used to traditionally define things is really all. These definitions are all up for grabs now. You mentioned that AM snack day part. With traffic being challenged, and year to date, food service traffic across all segments is down about 2.5% year over year, but that AM snack segment is up. Well, what does that mean? What is an AM snack? Well, again, it's based on the individual. That could be a hot prepared breakfast sandwich for some people. It could be a piece of fruit, a cup of yogurt for others. It could be a specialty coffee for some folks. So there's lots of ways to fill that need. And again, I think we just need to be flexible in allowing the consumer to create those definitions on their own, as opposed to trying to force feed what we think is an AM snack. And by the way, this applies to that PM snack period too, which convenience retail has always dominated the share of market at that PM snack. This is where there's been lots of innovation in the QSR space, including things like specialty beverage, specialty tea, specialty coffee, all of those things that are really encroaching on that PM snack space. But you'd be surprised how many times when we really drill down at a granular level and we look at these consumers who had a quote PM snack. Well, what did you have for your PM snack? Well, it was a burger and fries. And as marketers, we'd be tempted to say, well, that's not a snack. Well, hold on a minute. We don't get to decide. The consumer got to decide that was their snack. So one of the opportunities for convenience retailers who are really leaning into food service is to be willing to interchange what you perceive as a snack versus what you perceive as a main meal, and offer those things up at some of these differentiated day part occasions, because consumers are looking for those things.
You reminded me, maybe 5, 6 years ago, we joke in the office about second breakfast.
That's
And the
right.
idea is, and I think it became a thing, you could Google it and there's such a thing as second breakfast. And the idea was, well, maybe have your first breakfast before you go into work. And then you have a snack, which you could also call a second breakfast. That might be some grapes or a yogurt or something like that. But I was also imagine, as the world has changed over the last half dozen years, with more of these Zoom calls or team meetings or things like that, schedules get pretty tight. And somebody may say, wow, 10:30 is my last chance before I am just booked in meetings till 3 o'clock. So I'm gonna have a snack at 10:30. I'm gonna have a snack at 3. There's no lunch in there, and so it does create all these different moments if there's ways to understand consumer needs and maybe create a campaign tied up in meetings all day. Grab a snack when you're grabbing breakfast, and then reward them for that with either a value discount or some other way to recognize the problem you're solving for them.
Yeah, I really like that you recognize that in the Zoom or Teams driven world, every square inch of your calendar is up for grabs now. And, we're all running from one call to the next all the time. I think it's no surprise then that, one of the things that we see across the total food service landscape that has been a strong spot this year has been vending. So a lot of people, in the absence of time to really uh, source a more developed meal solution, a lot of people are hitting up vending.
And vending has changed dramatically. Farmers
You can get a
Fridge a
lot
couple
more
of years
from
ago.
vending today than you used to. Yeah,
Yeah, I
absolutely.
saw. If you see in airports, Farmers Fridge. It started in
Right.
Chicago. It's in other cities now. Um, Fresh salads made every day. I saw a Subway vending machine at the airport in Cincinnati. So you're seeing it, and they were selling sandwiches that were replenished every day. So these different opportunities.
Yeah, Jeff. Again, look, it perfectly illustrates, I think, what we said at the outset. It's not that we're saying, well, convenience stores need to be into vending. No, it's describing a consumer driven moment. The consumer is clearly illustrating, hey, I don't have a lot of time, yet I have these basic human needs that I have to fulfill. Nutrition being chief among them. And is how are you positioned in your operation to fulfill that need for the consumer? And I just think it just speaks volumes to where the consumer demand is. And we see this all the time. I've been doing this a long, long time in good economies, in bad economies. And I can tell you, right now we talked about traffic is challenged, traffic is down, but boy, there are people out there that are really winning big with the consumer. And guess what? When traffic is growing broadly again, those companies emerge with a lot more market share and a lot more momentum. So, even in a challenging macro environment, if you can think about the consumer in this way and really lean into what they're saying and what they're demanding, there are absolutely opportunities to grow. And I'm certain there are people in your audience listening to us today that are going, "Yeah, I'm winning. I'm killing it with my consumer right now."
Are there, and I said at the outset, they're coming for your business, QSRs. So, you always want to have a compelling lead to start off an episode. But are there day parts that are areas that could be of concern for convenience stores if they're not careful because QSRs see an opportunity?
Yeah, we talked about the PM snack day part, which is this idea of sometime in between lunch and dinner, and wherever that falls on the clock is a little subjective, right? Uh, that's where convenience store has always been dominant. We've seen a lot of development in the QSR landscape going after that day part. A lot of it's beverage focused. A lot of it, as I mentioned a moment ago, is specialty teas and coffees, and some of it is treat and indulgence focused, whether it's things like Jeremiah's Italian Ice, which is opening up stores like crazy. There are others. There's the Seven Brew Coffee, which is drive-through coffee bar. That's one of the faster growing concepts out there. So that space is being threatened for sure. And then the late night piece. QSRs have done a really good job at gaining some ground at late night.
I guess the old term, there used to be some management discussion about blue ocean and red ocean. Blue ocean means you have an ability to create something unique with a minimal competition compared to red ocean, which is where everybody's competing. I would imagine you'd call lunch as red ocean because everyone wants that. Sit down QSR, convenience store, anyone else that sells food trucks, keep it going. Are there any blue ocean opportunities that convenience stores could look at?
Well, I think, I don't know if it's blue ocean according to the definition that you served up, but any kind of differentiation in the marketplace. And here's one that I'm watching closely right now. Obviously, we talked about the consumer being under pressure, which means they're reducing their food service frequency. But here's what we're observing that's interesting. When they do go to food service, it isn't necessarily the low price point option that's winning in the marketplace right now. And so what the consumer is saying is, yeah, I'm going to save money. I'm going to watch how much I eat away from home. I'm going to watch how much I spend. But therefore, when I go, I really want to be delighted. I want to satisfy that ultimate craving. I'm looking for the best quality for the price paid. We've actually seen, even in this challenging environment, what we call the fast casual segment of the QSR space continues to grow traffic. It sells at a modest price premium, but arguably delivers a little bit more on the culinary scale or on the quality execution scale, or in some cases, what people perceive as being better for you. There are all kinds of ways to differentiate around that. And then the other one would be around a differentiated experience. And you might say, well, wait a minute, we're convenience retailers. We are not going to be in the entertainment business. But I would argue you don't have to be. Consumers are desperate to do business with people that delight them, that wow them, that give them that better experience in the overall transaction. And that can be simple. That could be done at a drive-through window. It can be done in front of your counter. But it's something that differentiates you from the other guy down the street. And we are really looking at the return of this, what I call the experiential consumer that's making a comeback.
That's really interesting. A couple weeks ago, we were on the road visiting convenience stores. We were in Indiana, and we stopped at a place that had what's the TV show The Bear. What did he start with? He started with the beef sandwiches, right? There was some specialty beef sandwich. Well, that's what these people sold, and it was I would call it QSR fast casual, where you order your food. You could order it via kiosk or somebody in person, and then they would bring it to you. And it was, if you think about it, it's really not that different than standing in line and then grabbing it yourself. But you're sitting down, and so it kind of straddled that experience of true QSR where you wait at the counter to sit down meal. And then the person that brought the food out is, oh, do you need more napkins? Do you need whatever? And we ended up feeling really good about the experience. It was an elevated QSR experience. And of course, right next to it is an ice cream place. And hey, you had a good experience there. I better get some ice cream too. Now, this was second dinner, or second lunch, waiting to dinner. So probably more than we needed to have. But that totally struck me as what you're talking about with the elevated QSR or elevated, how do you call it? Counter service plus as defining a unique experience.
And those are the kind of offerings that are pretty hard to compete with. And you don't have to deliver that at the absolute low price either. And I think consumers are clearly demonstrating that right now. Price always matters, especially right now. And that's why, again, the deals and the promotions are being so well received. But ultimately, when it comes to price, if that's really my primary motivation, I'm going to my pantry, my refrigerator, my freezer, because it's way less expensive every time. Once I've decided I'm going outside of my home, then it becomes much, much more about the overall experience, the quality, the total concept of value.
Well, if you like what David said today, give you a couple tips for how you can learn more. One is, I mentioned David spoke at the April NAC State of the Industry Summit. We have a full coverage June NACS magazine that goes through all the details. There's a great feature story on what David spoke about. If you don't get the print version, you can always go to nacsmagazine.com. If you are not signed up, you can sign up and read all the issues there. 150 pages in this latest. It looks like the September Vogue almost, but we have a couple more big issues coming up with the NAC show. Enough about the NACS magazine. How do they find out more about Circana if they want to know more about some of the information that you have, the resources available?
Yeah, Circana.com is a pretty good place to start. We're really excited, as Circana, for those that don't know, is the merger of the NPD Group and IRI, which means we're tracking about $3.2 trillion, trillion with a T, in consumer spend across general merchandise, food service, and retail. So we think that equips us with a really great view of the consumer to understand what's happening and how share of wallet is shifting.
Well, speaking of share, thanks for sharing with us today, David, and hope we can have you on again sometime soon. So thanks again for joining us today.
I would be honored to do this much.
And thank you all for listening to Convenience Matters.
Convenience Matters is brought to you by NACS and produced in partnership with Human Factor. For more information, visit convenience.org.